The stars outside the viewing window looked calm and endless, but Ethan Cole's heart was restless. He had been on the frontier colony for 6 months, working as a communications officer for the human delegation. Life here was different from Earth. Alien skies, twin moons, strange foods, and languages that carried more growls and clicks than vowels. He had signed up for exploration because he wanted adventure, but most days were filled with endless reports, long transmissions, and waiting for signals to bounce across the stars. That all changed the day the message arrived. The Volari Kingdom, the proud alien empire that ruled this sector, was holding a royal wedding. It was not just any wedding. It was the marriage of Princess Liara, the eldest daughter of King Thalos, the ruler whose word carried the weight of thousands of star systems. For humans, it was an honor simply to be allowed in the same room as the Volari royal family. For Ethan, it felt almost unreal when his commander handed him the invitation. "You've been selected to attend," the commander said, sliding the embossed alien script across the table. Ethan blinked. "Me, but why?" "I'm just a communications officer. Surely the ambassador or senior staff—" "They'll be there, of course," the commander interrupted. "But the Volari have requested that a younger human representative be included. Someone new, someone who has not yet been shaped by years of politics." His lips curved into the smallest smile. "That means you." Ethan's chest tightened. He wasn't ready for this. He had read about Volari customs in the data archives, but reading was one thing. Living it was another. The Volari were a warrior people taller than most humans, with skin patterns that shimmered under light, and a culture so bound by tradition that even a misplaced gesture could be seen as an insult. Still, he nodded. "Understood, sir." The day of the wedding arrived faster than he could prepare. The shuttle carried him and a small human delegation across the skies, descending toward the Volari capital. From above, the city looked like a web of crystal and stone, towers curving into the sky, glowing softly with the energy of bioluminescent vines. Bridges stretched between towers like silver ribbons, and processions of alien ships moved in careful order. The palace itself was breathtaking. It rose like a mountain of glass and gold, its spires catching the sunlight in ways that made it look alive. Carvings of ancient battles decorated the walls, each figure etched in meticulous detail. Soldiers in ceremonial armor lined the gates, their long spears glowing with embedded crystals. As the shuttle door opened, Ethan followed the ambassador and the rest of the human representatives. He felt the weight of hundreds of alien eyes on him. The Volari nobles were gathered in clusters, their robes flowing like water, their skin markings glowing faintly with their emotions. He had learned that Volari markings brightened when they were curious, dimmed when they were angry, and flickered when amused. Right now, many of them glowed with curiosity as they watched the human delegation walk into the palace. Inside, music filled the hall, a deep, rhythmic sound made by instruments Ethan had never seen before. The walls shone with soft light, and the air carried the fragrance of alien flowers. The hall was enormous, with rows of nobles seated on both sides, leaving a long pathway toward the throne where King Thalos sat. The king was a massive figure, his skin shimmering like polished stone, his eyes sharp and calculating. At his side sat Princess Liara. Ethan had seen her image before in reports, but in person she was striking. Her skin carried a silver hue with faint patterns that looked like constellations. She wore a flowing garment made of woven threads that reflected light like water. She was younger than Ethan had imagined, her expression calm but curious as her eyes briefly settled on him. Ethan felt his knees weaken. He reminded himself to keep his posture straight and follow protocol. The ceremony began with long chants from the priests, each word vibrating in the air like thunder. The Volari nobles raised their arms, repeating certain phrases in unison. Ethan tried to follow along quietly, bowing when the others bowed, raising his head when they did. But then it happened. One of the priests raised a hand and looked directly at Ethan. Everyone else lowered their gaze, but Ethan, thinking it was a sign of respect, bent forward in a deep bow. He held it longer than most, wanting to show proper courtesy. When he rose again, the hall had gone strangely silent. The priest's eyes widened, glowing bright green with shock. Murmurs ran through the crowd. The ambassador beside Ethan stiffened, his expression shifting into alarm. "What did I do?" Ethan whispered, but it was too late. The priest raised both arms and declared something in the Volari tongue. The words echoed across the chamber and nobles gasped. The king's eyes narrowed, and Princess Liara's expression changed from calm to startled. The ambassador leaned toward Ethan and whispered urgently, "You fool. You've just performed the binding gesture." Ethan's heart raced. "The what?" "The sacred pledge of union," the ambassador said, his face pale. You've just proposed marriage in front of the entire royal court." Ethan froze. His mind went blank. Marriage? Union? He had only bowed. How could a simple gesture mean so much? The king stood slowly, his voice booming like rolling thunder. "It has been long since the right was invoked by one unbound. The ancient law cannot be denied. The human has spoken. He has pledged." The hall erupted into voices, some shocked, others laughing, a few shouting in outrage. The intended groom, a tall Valari noble with bronze skin patterns, rose in fury, his markings flashing red. "This is madness. He is no warrior, no noble. He is an outsider!" But the priests shook their heads. "The law is older than thrones. If the gesture was given in truth before witnesses, it must be honored." Ethan's mouth went dry. He tried to speak. "Your Majesty, this is a misunderstanding. I didn't mean," but the crowd drowned him out, chanting words he couldn't understand. Princess Liara stood from her seat. Her eyes locked on Ethan. She walked forward gracefully, her presence commanding silence. When she reached him, she leaned close enough that only he could hear her whisper. "If you walk away," she said softly, "you doom your people." The Valari do not forgive insult to a princess. Ethan felt the world spin around him. He had come here to witness a wedding. Now, without meaning to, he had just become the groom. The music rose again, different now, faster, stronger, like a storm building. Nobles began to chant, their markings glowing brightly. The priest raised his arms and declared the next step of the ritual. Ethan could feel hundreds of eyes burning into him. His hands trembled. His mind screamed at him to deny it, to shout that this was all wrong. But Liara's words echoed in his head. If he refused, he wouldn't just embarrass himself. He might cause a rift between humanity and the Valari kingdom. Ethan stood frozen, caught between two impossible paths. And in that moment, as the crowd's chant grew louder, Ethan realized his life would never be the same again. The grand hall still echoed with the chants of the Valari nobles, when Ethan Cole stood frozen at the center. He had come as a guest, but now everyone looked at him as if he were the chosen groom. His mind spun, trying to find words to undo what had just happened. But words did not come fast enough. The alien noble who had been the true intended groom, Lord Karoth, stepped forward, his tall frame casting a shadow over Ethan. His bronze markings flashed crimson, a sign of anger. "This cannot stand," Karoth growled, his voice shaking with rage. "A human? An outsider? The princess was promised to me." The hall grew tense. Soldiers gripped their spears. Nobles whispered among themselves. The priests stood firm, their glowing eyes focused on Ethan as though he had been chosen by fate. King Thalos raised his hand, and silence returned. His voice thundered across the chamber. "The right of union was given, it is law. The one who speaks the gesture before witnesses cannot be denied." Karoth's markings blazed brighter. "You would set aside years of arrangement, alliances, and honor. For this fragile creature?" He pointed at Ethan with disgust. "This human does not know our ways. He cannot fight, he cannot lead. He will bring only shame." Ethan finally found his voice. He stepped back, his hands raised. "This is all a mistake. I never meant—" But once again his words were swallowed by the noise of the crowd. Some shouted in outrage, others laughed at the absurdity, while a few looked intrigued. Princess Liara walked closer, her silver patterns glowing faintly as her gaze fixed on Ethan. "The law binds us," she said softly. Though her words carried enough weight for the whole hall to hear, the right was spoken. Whether by mistake or by will, it cannot be undone. Her voice was calm, but her eyes held an intensity that made Ethan's heart pound. After the ceremony paused, Ethan was led to a side chamber with the human ambassador and 2 Valari guards. His mind raced with confusion and dread. "This is madness," he said, his voice shaking. I bowed. "That's all. I didn't propose. How can they believe this?" The ambassador sighed, his face pale. "You bowed in the exact form of their binding gesture. For the Valari, it is not just a bow, it is a sacred vow. Their priests saw it, the nobles saw it, the king himself saw it. There is no undoing this without insulting the entire Valari kingdom." Ethan pressed his hands against his face. So what am I supposed to do? Just marry an alien princess? Live here forever? I didn't sign up for this. You don't have a choice, the ambassador said quietly. If you refuse, they will see it as betrayal. The Valari are proud. An insult to the royal family is an insult to the entire species. That could mean war, or at least the end of any human presence in their territory. The word struck Ethan like a hammer. He had wanted adventure, but this was not the kind he had imagined. Meanwhile, in another chamber, Princess Liara sat with her attendants. They whispered nervously, their markings flickering with mixed emotions. One asked, "Will you accept this human, my lady?" "He is weak." Liara raised her hand to silence them. Her face was unreadable, her silver patterns dim but steady. The law is clear. I cannot deny what was done. But weakness is not always as it seems. The human may be different from us, yet different does not always mean lesser. Still, in her heart, Liara felt conflicted. She had been raised to accept her father's choice of groom, to marry for alliance and duty. But never had she imagined her groom would be an alien from another world, an alien who did not even know what he had done. Later that evening, a feast was held to continue the celebration, though the mood was heavy. The great hall was filled with food and drink, long tables stacked with glowing fruits, roasted creatures, and bowls of fragrant herbs. Musicians played their strange instruments, filling the air with deep tones. Ethan sat at the high table beside Princess Liara and King Thalos. Every eye in the hall seemed to be on him, watching his every move. He tried to eat carefully, though the alien food was unlike anything he had ever seen. Some dishes shimmered, others hissed softly as if still alive. He forced himself to swallow, not wanting to offend. Liara spoke quietly so only he could hear. "You seem lost." "That's because I am lost," Ethan admitted. "I don't belong here. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Her eyes studied him, calm but sharp. "And yet here you are." "The right binds us. The eyes of my people are upon you. If you walk away, you dishonor me, and dishonor is a wound my people never forgive." Ethan lowered his gaze. "What do you want me to do?" "Survive," she said simply. "Learn our ways. Show them that you are not weak. If you fail, you will not only doom yourself but your entire species." Her words sent a chill down his spine. Across the hall, Lord Karoth watched with fury. His drink sat untouched, his markings glowing deep red. His closest allies whispered in his ear, feeding his anger. "This cannot be allowed. That human will ruin everything." "You were promised the princess. You are the rightful heir by bond." Karoth clenched his fists. "If the king will not undo this, then I will." His allies looked uneasy. "You would risk challenging the king's law?" Karoth's eyes narrowed. "The law may bind, but laws can be broken. This human will not last. If he survives the ceremony, I will make sure he does not survive the days that follow." When the feast ended, Ethan was escorted to private chambers prepared for him. The room was filled with alien decorations, glowing tapestries, stone carvings of past rulers, and a wide bed covered with woven silk. He felt more like a prisoner than a guest. He sat down heavily, burying his face in his hands. What have I gotten myself into? His thoughts were interrupted by a soft sound at the door. It opened and Princess Liara entered, her attendants waiting outside. She stood tall, her silver markings glowing faintly in the dim light. Ethan rose quickly, unsure of what to do. "Your Highness." Princess?" Liara raised a hand. "You may speak freely. The formal words are not needed here." Ethan hesitated. "Why are you here?" She stepped closer, her gaze steady. "To tell you the truth, many here do not want you. They see you as weak. They see you as a mistake. Even my father has doubts, though he will never show them." Ethan swallowed hard. "So what do I do?" "You prove them wrong," Liara said firmly. "The trial of unity may come. If it does, you must face it. Until then, you must watch your steps. Karoth will not forgive this insult. He will come for you one way or another." Ethan felt his heart sink. "So I'm supposed to fight? To live up to alien traditions I don't understand?" Liara's eyes softened just for a moment. "Perhaps not with strength. Perhaps with something else. I do not know yet. But I will watch, and I will see if you are worthy." With that, she turned and left, leaving Ethan alone with his thoughts. As the chamber grew quiet again, Ethan realized the truth. He was no longer just a visitor. He was caught in a web of tradition, politics, and danger. Every move he made from now on would decide not only his own fate, but the fate of humans in Valari space. And somewhere in the shadows, Karoth was already planning his downfall. Ethan Cole lay awake in his chamber long after Princess Liara left. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the palace walls alive with hidden energy. His thoughts churned like a storm. Just days ago, he had been a simple communications officer, worried about signal errors and transmission delays. Now he was tied by law to a princess, marked as the husband of a king's daughter, and targeted by nobles who wanted him gone. Sleep did not come easily, but when it did, it was shallow. He dreamed of endless alien faces staring at him, judging him, whispering in a language he could not understand. When morning arrived, the sound of a deep gong shook the palace and the doors to his chamber opened. 2 attendants entered, their glowing patterns shifting between gold and green. Without a word, they brought him new garments, robes stitched with Valari symbols of union. Ethan frowned. "So it begins," he muttered. He was led into the great courtyard of the palace where nobles and soldiers gathered. The courtyard was vast, with towering pillars shaped like spears and banners that shimmered with living light. At the center stood Princess Liara, dressed in formal attire, her silver markings glowing softly. She looked calm as always, but Ethan thought he caught a flicker of unease in her eyes. King Thalos sat on a raised throne, watching with an expression carved from stone. Priests stood nearby, chanting softly, their voices blending with the hum of the palace. Ethan was guided to stand beside Liara. The ambassador from the human delegation stood at the edge of the crowd. His face tense, one of the priests raised his staff. "The right has been spoken, but the bond must be strengthened. Until the final binding, the human must walk among us, learn our ways, and prove his worth. Only then will the union be sealed." The words echoed across the courtyard. Ethan understood enough to know what they meant. He would not be allowed to simply hide in the shadows. He would be tested. The following days were filled with ceremonies, lessons, and rituals. Ethan was shown how to greet nobles with the right gestures, how to share meals without insult, and how to endure long hours of ancient songs that told the history of the Valari. At first, he stumbled. His movements were awkward, his understanding limited. The nobles laughed behind their hands, their markings flickering with amusement. Ethan felt like a child trying to walk among giants, but he kept trying. One day, Liara herself guided him. They stood in a training hall lined with weapons and banners. "Our people honor strength," she said, handing him a staff longer than his own height. But strength does not always mean muscle. Sometimes it means will. Show them that you will not bend even when you stumble. Ethan gripped the staff clumsily. "I've never fought with anything like this." "Then learn," Liara said firmly. Under her watch, he practiced. His strikes were weak at first, his balance poor. But day by day, he improved. He used his quick mind to adapt, remembering angles, predicting movements, and using leverage rather than force. The Valari instructors frowned at his lack of power, but they could not ignore his persistence. Outside the training hall, whispers spread. Some nobles mocked him as a fool pretending to be a warrior. Others grew curious. A few even admitted that humans, though small and fragile, had surprising resilience. But not everyone was impressed. Lord Karoth watched from the shadows, his fury burning hotter with each passing day. The princess had been his future, his path to power. Now that path had been stolen by a human who barely knew which end of a spear to hold. "This cannot continue," Karoth whispered to his allies. "The king hides behind the law, but laws can be twisted. The trial of unity approaches. He will not survive it, and if he does, I will make sure he never leaves this palace alive." His allies shifted uneasily, but none dared oppose him. Meanwhile, Ethan's bond with Liara slowly changed. At first, their conversations were filled with formality, each word weighed carefully, but over time, the walls between them began to weaken. One evening, after a long day of rituals, they walked together in the palace gardens. The air was filled with glowing flowers and streams of silver water. Strange winged creatures fluttered among the branches, their wings sparkling like crystal. Ethan spoke softly. "You don't seem angry about this, about me. You had a future planned, and I ruined it." Liara stopped beside a fountain, her gaze thoughtful. "Anger is easy. Duty is harder. My life was never my own. I was always to be married for alliance, not for choice. Whether Karoth or you, it would never have been freedom. But you," She paused, her markings flickering faintly. You are different. You do not know our ways, yet you try. You are clumsy but honest. That is rare among nobles. Ethan felt a strange warmth at her words. So you don't hate me? Her lips curved slightly, almost a smile. Not yet. It was the first time he had seen her show even a hint of humor. For a moment, the weight on his chest felt lighter, but the danger never left. One night, as Ethan returned from the training hall, shadows moved around him. Before he could react, 3 figures leapt from the darkness, their blades flashing. Ethan stumbled back, heart pounding. He had no weapon, only his bare hands. The attackers struck quickly, aiming to silence him before he could cry for help. But survival brought out instincts he never knew he had. He dodged the first strike, grabbed a fallen rod from the ground, and swung wildly. It connected with one attacker's arm, forcing him back. Another lunged, but Ethan rolled aside, using his smaller size to slip beneath the alien's reach. Shouts echoed as guards rushed in, forcing the attackers to flee into the shadows. When Ethan was brought before King Thalos, bruised but alive, the king studied him with sharp eyes. You are still standing, the king said. That is more than I expected. Ethan bowed his head, his chest still heaving. I don't want to fight your people. I just want to survive this. The king's expression softened only slightly. Survival is a kind of strength. Perhaps you are not as weak as some believe. The attempted assassination changed everything. Rumors spread quickly. Some said Ethan had fought like a cornered beast. Others claimed he had been lucky. But either way, the whispers grew louder. Perhaps the human was not as helpless as he appeared. Liara visited him after the attack. She stood by his side as healers tended to his wounds. You could have run, she said quietly. But you did not. That will be remembered. Ethan managed a faint smile. I didn't run because my legs froze. Liara's eyes glimmered, and for the first time she laughed softly. Perhaps fear can also be strength if it keeps you alive. Their bond, fragile but real, grew deeper that night, but Karoth's anger burned hotter than ever. The failed assassination only made him more desperate. He stood before his allies once again, his voice low and dangerous. The trial of unity will decide everything. The human cannot win, and if by some chance he does, then we will finish what the assassins could not. One way or another, this ends with his death. The shadows around him seemed to agree. As the days passed, Ethan continued to train, learn, and endure. The weight of duty pressed on him from every side, but he began to realize something important. He was no longer fighting only for survival. He was fighting to protect the fragile peace between his people and the Valari. And though he had never chosen this path, part of him wondered if fate had chosen it for him. The trial of unity was coming, and with it, the moment that would decide his future, and perhaps the future of both species. The morning sun barely touched the horizon when Ethan Cole was summoned to the palace courtyard. Mist curled around the stone pillars, glowing faintly in the rising light. Today was no ordinary day. Today, the trial of unity would begin, the challenge that could cement his place beside Princess Liara or end everything. Before it truly started, Ethan's stomach churned as he adjusted the robes given to him for the ceremony. Unlike previous training, this trial was real. The courtyard was lined with Valari nobles and soldiers, their markings flashing with excitement, curiosity, and some with suspicion. At the far end, a massive portal shimmered, a gateway to the trial landscape. Beyond it lay the arena of unity, a vast alien wilderness filled with dangerous beasts, treacherous terrain, and unknown hazards. King Thalos's voice echoed over the courtyard. The trial of unity has awaited a groom for generations. Only by completing this test may one be recognized as worthy. Fail, and the bond cannot be confirmed. Ethan swallowed hard. I understand, he said, though his voice trembled slightly. Liara stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. Her silver patterns glimmered in the early light. I will walk with you, she said. Not to fight for you, but to see if your courage matches your will. Trust yourself, Ethan. That is all I ask. He nodded, unsure if he could survive, but feeling a strange reassurance from her presence. The portal shimmered, then expanded like a ripple across water. Ethan and Liara stepped through, and the world changed instantly. The air was thick, heavy with mist and the scent of alien plants. Towering trees with twisting trunks and glowing leaves surrounded them. Strange sounds echoed from every direction. growls, clicks, and shrill cries that set his nerves on edge. "Welcome to the arena," Liara said softly. "The trial tests mind, body, and heart. You will need all three." Before he could reply, a massive creature burst from the mist. It was taller than any human building he had ever seen, with thick scales and eyes that glowed like molten gold. Its roar shook the ground. Ethan froze, heart pounding. He had no weapons that could harm such a beast. The training he had received seemed worthless in the face of this raw power. But as the creature advanced, something clicked in his mind. He scanned the area quickly, noticing the terrain, the rocks, the vines, and the strange glowing pools. Using speed and clever thinking, he lured the creature toward a cliff edge. With a series of timed movements, he tripped a vine trap he spotted earlier, sending the massive beast tumbling into a pit. Liara's eyes widened. You used strategy, not strength," Ethan panted. "Sometimes brains matter more than brawn." Her faint smile was the first real reward he had felt in days. The trial did not end there. For hours they traversed alien forests, crossed rivers that seemed to flow with light instead of water, and climbed cliffs that twisted unnaturally toward the sky. Ethan's human endurance was tested at every turn. The terrain was exhausting, the gravity slightly heavier than he was used to, and the predators did not sleep. During one river crossing, they encountered a swarm of glowing insects that could paralyze with a touch. Liara prepared to fight them off, but Ethan noticed a pattern in their flight. Using a sharp stick and some quick thinking, he stirred up a small mud cloud, confusing the swarm and allowing them to pass unharmed. Liara's markings brightened faintly, a sign of approval. "You think fast," she said. "That may be your greatest strength." But not all challenges were physical. At one point, they came across a cavern filled with crystals that amplified fear. When they entered, Ethan was suddenly overwhelmed by visions of failure, of Karath's laughter, of humans and Valari alike turning against him. His legs trembled, and he stumbled. Liara tried to steady him. "You must control your mind," she said. "The trial does not care for fear. Only courage, even when the heart shakes, will see you through." Ethan closed his eyes and breathed deeply, focusing on his own thoughts rather than the illusions. Slowly, the visions began to fade, and he took steady steps through the cavern, Liara walking at his side, silent but supportive. At the exit, he collapsed to his knees, exhausted. Liara knelt beside him. "Do you see?" she said. "Strength is not only in the arm or the sword. It is in the heart, the mind, and in determination. You are stronger than you think." Ethan nodded, his body trembling but his resolve firming. Their final challenge approached, a vast plateau where a creature unlike any they had faced awaited. It had multiple limbs, quick reflexes, and scales that reflected light like mirrors, making it difficult to target. Liara's eyes flicked with concern. "This will test all you've learned," she said. Ethan gritted his teeth. He could not fight it with force. He remembered the lessons of strategy, patience, and observation. He studied the creature's movements, noticing a pattern in the way it attacked and shifted its weight. Using rocks and vines, he created a clever trap, luring it into a pit that had been camouflaged by the terrain. The creature roared, thrashed, and finally fell, exhausted, but alive. Ethan stepped back, panting, hands bleeding from scrapes and cuts. Liara's markings glowed brightly, an unspoken signal of respect and admiration. "You have passed the final test," she said softly. As they walked back to the palace, the shadows moved. From behind the trees, figures emerged. Karath and his allies had followed, hoping to strike the final blow and claim the trial for themselves. "You think you can survive our wrath?" Karath snarled, his markings blazing crimson. "You do not belong here." Ethan's body ached, but his mind was sharp. Using quick thinking, he led Karath's forces into a narrow canyon. The terrain favored clever tactics, not strength. Using misdirection, he caused them to stumble into traps he and Liara had observed earlier. Rocks tumbled, vines snared their legs, and within moments the attackers were disarmed and trapped. Karath glared at Ethan, breathing heavily, his plan undone. "This is impossible." Ethan stepped forward, chest heaving. "Sometimes thinking matters more than strength, and sometimes courage matters more than fear." Liara stepped beside him, her silver patterns shining brighter than ever. "You are not weak. You have proven yourself to me, to the king, and to our people. When they returned to the palace, the nobles gathered in the courtyard, their expressions mixed, some astonished, some grudgingly respectful, and others openly impressed. Ethan's human ingenuity, courage, and determination had been on display for all to see. King Thalos studied Ethan, his eyes sharp and calculating. After a long pause, he spoke. The trial of unity has been completed. The human has survived where many Valari would fail. He has shown courage, wit, and honor. The bond is no longer only law, it is proven by action. The courtyard erupted in murmurs and applause. Even some of the skeptics nodded in respect. Liara's eyes met Ethan's, her expression soft but proud. "You are ready," she said. Ethan could hardly believe it. He had survived the trial, faced impossible odds, and proved himself, not only to the Valari but to himself. For the first time since arriving at the palace, he felt a spark of true hope. But in the shadows, Karath's anger burned hotter than ever. Though defeated for now, he would not forget this humiliation, and Ethan knew that while the trial of unity had ended, his challenges were far from over. For now, though, he allowed himself a small victory. He had faced impossible odds, relied on his human mind, and survived. The path ahead remained dangerous, but he was no longer just a visitor or an outsider. He was part of this world now, and part of Liara's life. The palace glowed under the light of twin moons, casting silver shadows across the courtyard. Ethan Cole stood beside Princess Liara, his robe still slightly torn from the trial of unity. Though exhausted, he felt a quiet pride rising within him. The impossible challenge had been overcome, and the Valari people had witnessed his courage, his ingenuity, and his will to survive. King Thalos's eyes swept across the gathered nobles, then fixed on Ethan. "You have completed the trial of unity. You have proven your worth not merely by survival but by wisdom, courage, and honor. The bond of the right is now confirmed. The human is accepted as the husband of my daughter." The courtyard erupted in a mixture of awe and approval. Nobles whispered, their patterns flickering with surprise, some nodding reluctantly, others clapping in respect. Even the previously skeptical warriors and priests acknowledged the unprecedented achievement of this human outsider. Ethan's heart pounded, but he bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, I am honored, and I will do my best to serve and protect your people as well as mine." Liara stepped forward, her silver patterns glowing softly in the moonlight. "Ethan," she said, her voice calm but filled with warmth, "you did not seek this role. Yet through courage and thought you have earned it. Today is not only the bond of duty, it is the bond of choice, too." Ethan's throat tightened. For the first time, he truly felt that he belonged here. Not by mistake, not by misunderstanding, but by his own actions. But peace was fleeting. In the shadows, Lord Karath watched, his markings still flashing crimson with anger. He had failed in the trial of unity, humiliated in front of the court and his peers, yet he would not let it end so easily. As the celebrations began, Karath quietly gathered a few loyalists, whispering in the low tones of plotting. "This human will not take what should have been mine," he hissed. "If the king refuses to act, then we will." Ethan remained unaware of the brewing threat as he walked beside Liara through the palace gardens. Lanterns hung from twisting trees, glowing softly, reflecting in the streams that curved along the paths. Strange winged creatures flitted in the air, their movements like living starlight. "You have grown stronger," Liara said, breaking the silence. "Not in size or strength, but in understanding. That is what I respect most." Ethan smiled faintly, brushing a hand through his hair. "I never imagined I would survive a single day here, let alone a trial meant for the strongest Valeri. And yet here I am." Liara's gaze softened. "You are here not by mistake, Ethan. Perhaps the stars intended this all along." He laughed softly, shaking his head. "The stars? Maybe. Or maybe sheer luck." The festivities continued with feasts and dances, and Ethan was gradually introduced to more of the Valeri culture in a lighter, joyful setting. He tried alien dishes that shimmered like liquid light, tasted fruits that changed flavor with each bite, and even participated in dances that required perfect coordination of steps, gestures, and patterns on the ground that glowed beneath their feet. Through it all, Liara stayed close, guiding him and laughing gently at his frequent missteps. For the first time, the tension of his role eased, replaced by the sense of companionship that had slowly grown over the days. But the night's peace was abruptly shattered. A sudden shout echoed across the palace grounds, followed by the clanging of weapons and the roar of armored figures. Ethan's heart jumped. He recognized the tall, bronze-marked forms, Karoth and his loyalists. The ex-groom had decided to strike, attempting a coup to reclaim what he believed was rightfully his. Liara drew her sword with calm precision. "Stay close to me," she ordered. "We must protect the king and the people." Ethan's mind raced. He had no training for an open battle of this scale, but he remembered every lesson of strategy, observation, and quick thinking from the trial. He scanned the area and noticed that the attackers had underestimated the terrain. The courtyard's elevated bridges, the fountains, and the glowing pools could all be used to their advantage. "Follow my lead," he whispered to Liara. Together, they moved across the courtyard, using obstacles to funnel the attackers into narrow spaces. Ethan used his human ingenuity, tipping over a lantern post to block a path, causing several attackers to stumble. Liara moved with elegance and precision, her strikes swift and effective. Karoth's anger burned hotter with each setback. "Impossible!" he shouted, charging directly at Ethan. Ethan dodged, ducked, and used his small size to his advantage. He led Karoth onto a bridge where a quick push and careful leverage caused the ex-groom to lose his footing and tumble into a soft, glowing moss below. The remaining attackers surrendered quickly, their morale shattered by the display of human wit and Valeri skill combined. When the dust settled, King Thalos stepped forward, his expression calm but commanding. "This human has defended our palace, our people, and our princess. He has not only proven his worth in the trial, but in action as well. Let all witnesses remember, Ethan Cole the human is now the husband of my daughter and a protector of the Valeri kingdom." The nobles, once skeptical, now bowed and acknowledged him. Even some of Karoth's former allies looked at him with newfound respect. Liara approached, her eyes reflecting pride and relief. She extended her hand. "Ethan, you have faced trials, threats, and doubt. Yet you stand here not by force alone, but by courage and thought. Today marks the true beginning of our bond." Ethan took her hand, feeling a warmth he had never known. I promise to honor this bond, princess. To protect and respect you and your people as I would my own." Liara nodded, her gaze steady and unwavering. "And I promise to stand with you not as a princess bound by duty, but as someone who chooses to walk beside you." In the days that followed, Ethan began to learn the responsibilities of his new role. He attended council meetings, contributed to discussions about trade and defense, and helped negotiate the integration of human and Valeri knowledge. His unique perspective, quick thinking, practical solutions, and adaptability proved invaluable. The Valeri began to see humans in a new light, not as fragile outsiders, but as allies capable of bravery, cleverness, and loyalty. Ethan's presence bridged a gap that decades of diplomacy had struggled to fill. Karoth, meanwhile, was sent into exile, his plots and arrogance thoroughly defeated. Though he remained a lingering threat, his power was broken, and the Valeri nobles learned that loyalty and cunning mattered as much as tradition and strength. One evening, Ethan and Liara walked through the palace gardens again. The moonlight shimmered across the water, illuminating the strange, glowing flowers. Ethan turned to her. "Liara, I never expected to end up here. I thought a single beau at a wedding would be the worst mistake of my life. Instead, it changed everything, for better or worse." Liara smiled softly. "It was no mistake, Ethan. It was fate, chance, or perhaps the stars themselves. And you have faced it with courage and thought. That is what makes you worthy." He looked out at the horizon, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also a sense of purpose. For the first time, he felt that his presence had meaning, that his choices mattered not just for him, but for both humans and Valeri alike. Ethan realized that he had not only survived a series of impossible challenges, he had grown stronger, wiser, and more confident. And in Liara, he had found a partner who respected and trusted him, not for what he could do alone, but for who he was and what he could become together with her. The palace halls now echoed with laughter and music, celebrating both the union and the renewed alliance between humans and Valeri. Ethan stood beside Liara on the balcony, looking out over the city that glimmered like a constellation of stars. "Do you think we're ready?" Ethan asked. Liara's silver patterns shimmered warmly. "We will learn together. We will face challenges together. And we will build a future together. That is enough." Ethan smiled, finally feeling at peace. His journey from a simple human visitor to the husband of the king's daughter was complete, not by accident, but by courage, ingenuity, and the willingness to embrace the unknown. Above them, the twin moons shone brightly, witnesses to a new era, one where humans and Valeri would stand side by side, stronger together than ever before. And for Ethan, that was more than enough.